During the Second World War, the German Panther tank emerged as one of the most effective designs on the battlefield. Known for its impressive combination of firepower, armor, and mobility, the Panther is often hailed as the best tank of the war. Initially planned as a medium tank, the Panther ended up weighing 45 tons, making it comparable to a heavy tank. Unlike the other big cats, the Tiger I and Tiger II, the Panther benefited from a streamlined production process, keeping its costs and labor hours only slightly higher than those of the Panzer IV, the main workhorse of the German army. This efficiency allowed Germany to produce over 6,000 Panthers. Given that the Panther's cost was less than half and its battlefield effectiveness was nearly on par with, or sometimes even superior to, the Tigers, it raises a critical question. What if Germany had opted to focus resources on refining and mass-producing the Panther, rather than investing valuable time and materials into building the heavier Tigers? Could the Panthers have taken on the same roles as the Tigers, achieving similar success in battle? And would focusing on Panthers have offered a more sustainable strategy for Germany's overstretched war industry? Join us as we explore the answers to these intriguing questions. The Panther project began in 1938 as Germany sought a new medium tank to replace the Panzer III and IV, aiming for a 20-ton fully tracked vehicle. Meanwhile, a separate effort focused on a heavier breakthrough tank in the 30 to 33-ton range. However, Hitler's confidence in the existing Panzer III and IV models grew after the swift victory in France, leading to a pause in developing these medium and heavy tanks. Yet, encounters with well-armored French tanks like the Char B1, alongside the British Matilda II, revealed the limitations of the German armor and underscored the need for better armed and armored tanks. On May 26, 1941, Henschel and Porsche were tasked with developing designs for a 45-ton tank, expected to be ready by June 1942, officially kickstarting the heavy tank project. And yet, Hitler overlooked the need to restart the stalled medium tank project. At the time, Hitler and his advisors underestimated Soviet tank capabilities, unaware of the T-34 and KV-1 tanks the Soviets were developing, which would soon prove to be formidable adversaries. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941, they were caught off guard by the formidable Soviet T-34 medium tanks and KV-1 heavy tanks. The German forces were particularly impressed by the T-34's features: sloped armor, which provided significantly improved effective thickness, wide tracks that boosted mobility over soft terrain, and a 76.2mm gun with strong armor penetration and effective high-explosive rounds. With this new understanding, the medium tank project was accelerated, and requirements for the tank increased to a 30-ton vehicle. However, under Hitler's directives, the tank's weight was ultimately pushed to 45 tons, leading to the development of the Panther. Reichsminister Albert Speer recounted in his autobiography Inside the Third Reich, since the Tiger had originally been designed to weigh 50 tons, but as a result of Hitler's demands had gone up to 57 tons, we decided to develop a new 30-ton tank whose very name, Panther, was to signify greater agility. Though light in weight, its motor was to be the same as the Tiger's, which meant it could develop superior speed. But in the course of a year, Hitler once again insisted on clapping so much armor on it, as well as larger guns, that it ultimately reached 48 tons, the original weight of the Tiger. Known for their thick armor and powerful 88mm gun, Tiger tanks were designed for heavy-duty engagements and direct confrontations with enemy armor. Their role was often to act as a breakthrough vehicle, smashing through heavily fortified positions and engaging enemy tanks head-on. While originally classified as a medium tank, the Panther had a long-barreled 75mm gun, which was highly effective against armor at range. Panthers were intended to counter the Soviet T-34 and were deployed with the goal of achieving both high mobility and strong anti-tank capabilities. Panthers often served as the backbone of panzer divisions, engaging enemy armor at a distance and supporting infantry. The Panthers were hurried into action at the Battle of Kursk in the summer of 1943, despite numerous unresolved technical issues that led to high losses due to mechanical breakdowns. While most of these flaws were addressed by late 1943 and early 1944, the Panther's reliability was consistently affected by the Allied bombing of German production plants, shortages of high-quality alloys for essential parts, fuel shortages, limited training space, and the declining quality of crew members. Over time, the Panther's reliability improved, and it became a highly effective combat vehicle. However, some design flaws, like the weak final drive, were never fully resolved, which limited the tank's performance in the field. General Otto von Manteuffel regarded the Panther as Germany's most satisfactory tank, noting that it would have been close to ideal if only it could have been designed with a lower silhouette. The Tiger tank's production demanded substantial resources, both in manpower and materials, making it an expensive vehicle. Due in part to these high costs, only 1,347 Tiger I and 492 Tiger II tanks were built. Efforts to streamline German armored vehicle production gained momentum after Albert Speer became Reichsminister in early 1942, steadily improving through to 1944. The Panther tank's production aligned with this period of increased efficiency, allowing for a more cost-effective approach compared to the resource-intensive Tigers. Key elements of the Panther design, such as its armor, transmission, and final drive, were simplified to improve production rates and address shortages of raw materials. Even after the introduction of streamlined production processes, Germany never achieved the manufacturing efficiency seen in Allied factories during World War II. The production cost of a Panther tank was 117,100 Reichsmark. This was higher than the 82,500 Reichsmark for the Stug III, 96,000 Reichsmark for the Panzer III, and 103,500 Reichsmark for the Panzer IV, but still considerably lower than the 250,800 Reichsmark for the Tiger I. What is remarkable is that despite weighing nearly twice as much as the Panzer IV and offering superior firepower, armor, and mobility, the Panther's production cost only increased by 13%. This made it an incredibly cost-effective tank relative to its capabilities. The use of forced labor on German production lines helped reduce costs, but it also significantly increased the risk of sabotage. As the war progressed, the Germans focused on improving production methods to increase output and lower costs. By comparison, the early production cost of a Tiger I tank in 1942 to 1943 was estimated to be as high as 800,000 Reichsmark. In terms of labor hours, it took only 25% more time to produce a Panther compared to a Panzer III. This meant that, under similar production conditions, 4 Panthers could be produced for every 5 Panzer III tanks. The Panther's main armament was the Rheinmetall Borsig 75mm KWK 42L70, featuring semi-automatic shell ejection and a supply of 79 rounds. While the caliber was common among Allied tanks, the Panther's gun was one of the most powerful of the war. This was due to its large propellant charge and long barrel, which resulted in an exceptionally high muzzle velocity and excellent armor-piercing capabilities. Among Allied tank guns of similar caliber, none had comparable muzzle energy, giving the Panther a significant edge in firepower. The British Sherman Firefly, equipped with the Ordnance QF 17-pounder gun and using APDS ammunition, had higher potential for armor penetration than the Panther's 75mm KWK-42. However, the Firefly's gun was notably less accurate, as the separation of the shot and sabot created disturbances during firing. Additionally, while the Firefly could penetrate armor more effectively, its rounds caused less severe internal damage inside the target compared to the Panther's more conventional shell design. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 gun, with its flat trajectory and superior accuracy, made it highly effective at hitting targets, especially at longer ranges. The flat trajectory allowed for better range estimation and made it easier to hit moving targets compared to other tanks. In terms of raw penetration power, the Panther's 75mm gun outperformed the 88mm KWK-36 gun of the Tiger I, despite the latter's larger caliber. While the Tiger I's 88mm shell might cause more damage if it penetrated, the Panther's 75mm gun had better armor-piercing capabilities, making it more effective in combat situations, especially against the more common tank armor it faced. The Panther's use of sloped armor was a key feature that helped balance weight and protection. The angled 80mm glassy plate on the front of the tank provided more effective protection than the Tiger I's 100mm vertical armor plate. The sloped armor increased the effective thickness of the plate by making incoming rounds penetrate at an angle. If an enemy fired directly at the front of the Panther, the armor would be equivalent to 139mm of vertical armor. However, if the shot was at a 45-degree angle, the effective armor thickness would increase to 197mm, making it far more difficult for enemy rounds to penetrate. As a result, Allied tank crews frequently tried to outflank the Panther to exploit its weaker side or rear armor. German Panther crews, on the other hand, focused on keeping their front armor facing the enemy as much as possible. Equipped with the same 690 horsepower Maybach V12 petrol engine as the Tiger I, the Panther had a high power-to-weight ratio, which gave it exceptional mobility. The Panther's combination of speed and mobility made it highly effective in both offensive and defensive operations. While the Panther shared the same engine as the Tiger I, it offered several key advantages. The Panther had superior gun penetration, was lighter and faster, and could navigate rough terrain more effectively than the Tiger I. However, this came at the cost of weaker side armor, making the Panther more vulnerable to flanking attacks. Additionally, its high explosive shells were less powerful compared to those of the Tiger I. Despite these trade-offs, the Panther proved highly effective in open country and long-range engagements, where its mobility and firepower gave it a significant edge. The tank's performance steadily improved as its mechanical flaws were resolved over time. Furthermore, the Panther was far cheaper to produce than the Tiger I, making it a more cost-effective solution for the German war effort, especially as production methods were streamlined. While early teething problems were significant, the Panther ultimately became a highly effective and reliable fighting vehicle. Tiger battalions were often independent heavy tank battalions, assigned to critical areas or high-priority, offensive and defensive operations. Their specialized status and smaller numbers allowed them to be used in more carefully chosen, impactful roles. Panthers were integrated into regular Panzer divisions as the primary armored fighting vehicle. This allowed for larger scale and more flexible operations, but meant that they were often exposed to situations that required maneuvering and mobility. Their thinner side armor and mechanical complexity sometimes limited their effectiveness in prolonged, high-intensity engagements. The Tiger's 88mm gun gave it a tremendous advantage, allowing it to destroy most enemy tanks before they could get within effective range. Tiger battalions generally achieved impressive kill ratios, often between 10-1 and 12-1, in favorable conditions. They performed particularly well in defensive roles, where they could take advantage of long-range engagements. The Panthers' kill ratios were similarly high, often cited around 5-1 to 7-1. Although lower than the Tiger, this ratio was still impressive, especially considering the Panther was produced in much higher numbers. Panthers were more vulnerable to mechanical issues, and their side armor was weak, making them less survivable than Tigers in prolonged engagements. Tigers were a major psychological weapon on the battlefield. Allied forces were often wary of encountering Tigers due to their firepower and armor, which allowed them to take on multiple enemy tanks and turn battles in Germany's favor. In specific engagements such as Kursk and later defensive actions, Tigers frequently dominated. The Panther's combination of firepower and armor made it effective against medium tanks like the T-34 and M4 Sherman. Panthers performed well in set-piece battles but sometimes struggled in close quarters or forested terrain due to their limited maneuverability and weak side armor. Tigers achieved higher individual kill counts due to their superior firepower, protection, and deployment in high-stakes environments. For example, Tiger aces like Michael Wittmann and Otto Carius achieved over 100 tank kills, which was more difficult for individual Panther commanders, given the tank's role and vulnerability in certain conditions. Panthers, however, contributed to a larger share of tank kills due to their numbers and usage. Panthers were produced in greater quantities and deployed more frequently, especially on the Eastern Front, contributing significantly to the German kill counts against Soviet armor. The Panther was cheaper and faster to produce than the Tiger and King Tiger. It required fewer materials and less time per unit, which would have allowed Germany to field more tanks at a time when they were losing control over key resources. The Panther was better suited for the kind of mobile defense and counterattacks that Germany needed late in the war. It could engage enemy armor effectively, while still being mobile enough to pull back when necessary. While they were superb in defensive positions, the heavier Tigers were less effective in mobile warfare. Their slow speed and mechanical fragility made them liabilities during retreats or rapid movements, especially when German forces were being pushed back. By mass-producing Panthers, Germany could have deployed more tanks in the field, overwhelming the enemy with numbers. In many cases, the sheer number of Allied tanks, particularly from the Soviets and Americans, was a deciding factor in tank engagements. A larger force of Panthers might have slowed or even reversed some of the devastating losses on both the Eastern and Western fronts. Producing and maintaining large numbers of Tigers and King Tigers stretched Germany's already limited fuel, spare parts, and repair capabilities. Their need for specialized parts and extra fuel made them harder to support in the field. Panthers, while not without their issues, were more manageable in terms of supply chains and repair logistics. A more uniform production of the Panther would have simplified logistics, allowing for better coordination and deployment of resources. While the Tiger and King Tiger were incredibly powerful tanks in direct combat, their limited numbers, high production costs, mechanical issues, and logistical challenges made them less suited to Germany's needs as the war dragged on. The Panther, with its balance of firepower, mobility, and production efficiency, would have likely served Germany better had it been mass-produced in place of the Tigers and King Tigers. With more Panthers on the battlefield, Germany might have had a stronger defensive force, capable of responding more flexibly to the overwhelming numbers of Allied and Soviet armor.